gone through those stages where you feel like perhaps you're already quite married, and then get to the church wedding, which is held normally in a morning service. So ours was 3 or 4 days after the last step, and then 8 o'clock in the morning you have the service, and then on the way home from the church there was the dancing, the welcoming dancing like Ibututi and Jackson were doing, and then in the evening you have a big wedding reception. Our wedding reception was about 3,000 people because in the same way that the number of buffalo and the number of horses is considered part of the social status of the people. Now that lots of people live in town and they've got money and connections, they do things. They want to invite as many people as they can, and that means inviting basically everyone you know. And for us, a lot of people we didn't know because we weren't in charge of doing invitations, and not inviting some people we did know because the invitations only go out about 4 days before the wedding. So there was 2,000 plastic chairs that were full, and all the cooking was done in that one. There's 2 kitchens, one of which is down on the left-hand side there, where they're cleaning out the rice the day before. And we sat up on the stage for the reception, and we chose to wear traditional clothes, and we also tried a little bit to try and take it back to some of the more traditional Sumbonese things, because a lot of brides wear full white dresses like I am in the church wedding, but also what we would consider quite tacky backgrounds with plastic flowers everywhere, plastic grass, you name it. So we said no plastic, and the friends from the NGO that I worked with designed everything to be without plastic, and it works very well. We'll go. So that's, I guess, a quick summary of the sort of 3 steps for our wedding. It was an amazing and very busy time, and something that I think we're still reflecting on now. Oh yeah, and so the other thing that most people, you see there's a display of souvenirs and wedding invitations just behind the screen here. For our wedding, rather than giving people souvenirs, we decided we didn't want souvenirs, we were just going to give people birunat, which is the traditional way of doing things. There was many people that protested that and said, oh, well, if you don't want to do souvenirs, we'll give you key rings and these kinds of things, which we felt weren't in the spirit of what we were trying to do. So instead we gave people trees in little woven Sumbonese baskets. So they took seedlings home instead. And so we're hoping to try and create a different way. Oh yeah, we also didn't wear, most Sumbonese people now wear gold rings, but we chose to go with traditional turtle shell rings because it's traditional, but also B, because there's a big gold mine proposed for Sumba, and we openly reject that idea. And so we thought that if we're wearing gold, that sort of goes against what we're principe betul. I don't know what the English way to say that is. But that. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, so that's a good question. So is the exchange the same between the same value between the bride's family and the husband's family? No. It's definitely a lot heavier on the groom's family, because in our case, when they talk about sort of a son of a king getting married, then normally they start to talk about 100 head of cattle. Now, and in that they're talking about horses and buffalo. They don't include cows. Occasionally cows come out as food. They're food for the wedding feast, but they're not actually part of the bride negotiations. In our case, we ended up with 15 livestock altogether, 4 buffalo and 11 horses. And we only gave cloth in return. So, you know, one horse would have the value of anywhere between $100 and $1,000. But one piece of cloth normally is somewhere around $100 or $150. So it's definitely, the boys family need to sort of, yeah, there's a lot more responsibility, yes.
One thing that the Sumba's, I learned a lot about giving gifts in Sumba because it's the stuff of life, you know. This is a world where everything is relationships. There is no state to look after you, there is only family and friends. They know a lot about relationships and the role of gifts. One of the rules is that you should never pay someone back with something of exactly the same value as what they gave you, because that means you're even. And the relationship isn't going anywhere. So you always keep the relationship alive. So if you pay back what you owe, you must always give a little bit more. And not just a tiny bit more, which might be interest on the loan. You're tipping the relationship up in debt this over the other way, deliberately. So now they will put something back to you. It's a very bad thing to pay things back. This is, we're interested in a relationship which will go on forever. Completely different set of rules from what you go down the market, you know.
But therefore, present giving, particularly as somebody coming who says, you know, I want to take something to give to the family, becomes rather hazardous, especially if the people are poor. Because if you give a costly present, you're asking them to give what they can't afford. So they'll have to go and borrow money to give you a decent present.
Well, yes, if you're a flighty visitor who goes, just visits for now and moves on, it is like that. But I must say, I have never for a moment regretted receiving things or giving things to somebody in person.
In Bali around 1930, people said they were embarrassed when they gave a rich present, and then the poor people felt obliged to give at least the equivalent in value, and they couldn't afford it. That's an example.
Yes, but if they think there's only a limited range of gifts they could possibly give you, then that's a dilemma. But when you live there, there's they actually may be rich, and they must have just had a big rice harvest come in, so they can give you lots of rice.
Do you often come home bearing bags of rice?
Absolutely.
Well, you do make an interesting point, and it does happen to our family sometimes, in that we are very careful about which ceremonies we attend, and even though we know something might be going on and you think we should go to that, because my husband's from one of the big families, you don't go unless someone specifically invites you, because you can be created in that situation where they're not ready or they don't have the resources to deal with it all respectfully, and so they won't invite our family if they don't if they're not ready for us. And we don't get offended if there's a funeral and we don't get invited. We're not offended by that because we know the implications of that for us and also for their families. So there is that aspect sometimes. But
I'm also very interested with the using a special language for the bride negotiation. Now, there's an echo of Aboriginal culture there, where the young man is not supposed to speak to his mother-in-law directly. Very serious crime, so he has to speak in a special language. And in effect, they're doing something similar because they're saying, you will not speak to each other directly, which is rude, and not the way to do things.
it's almost, sometimes the Wunang is almost like an insurance policy, because they're supposed to be the diplomats, so nasty things are said over here, nasty things are said over there, but when they get down to the middle, they can speak calmly and properly. But there is also, I'm not supposed to speak to my father-in-law or brother-in-laws who have married, like my husband's sister,
Because you might be seduced or he might be seduced.
Yes, other men who have married into the family I'm not supposed to speak to, but I'm allowed to be close to his brothers because if something was to happen to Orman, because these negotiations have happened as a family, I am still the family's responsibility. So if something happened to him, then his brothers would have to look after me. So, yeah, so there is still that. But also, Orman's not supposed to speak to his... Yeah, not supposed to speak to your mother-in-law and also my brother's wife.
Taboos, really.
Yeah, so there's lots of taboos.
We're going to end with another little dance in a minute, but maybe it'd be interesting if you tell us a little bit, because in addition to becoming a Sudanese housewife, becoming an international diplomat of sorts, you're also actually doing a thesis at Charlestown University. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It's not that exciting because my work at the university is actually about water management, so I'm involved in culture, but I don't study it, which I think is probably good because you probably go a little bit crazy if you're both. And I don't know how you managed it. So I'm looking, basically there's a lot of mud coming into a weir in East Sumba, and my project is trying to work out where the mud's coming from, so where the major erosion sources are coming from. So it's a very exciting project for me, but I don't think talking about mud doesn't get many people excited. But my husband works for the government as well, so we're constantly kind of involved in many activities.